Welcome to the Reconnection Club Podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. In episodes 149 and 150, I read through some excerpts from a letter that I received from an estranged adult child. Letters like those are almost always extremely painful for parents to read, not least because they're often written by people in extreme pain. So, letters from estranged adult children pack an emotional wallop on both ends. And at the same time, they also contain vital information about what's causing the estrangement and what might be needed from the parent to heal the relationship. So, in addition to being critical in the sense that the parent may feel criticized, these letters and emails can also be critical in their importance to your goal of reconnecting. Think of such letters as precious jewels that arrive in a box covered in stinging nettles and thorns. To grasp the treasure, you have to somehow overcome the pain that surrounds it. Parents sometimes refer to messages from their estranged adult children as a nasty email or a letter full of lies. And those phrases display the emotion of someone who's been poked in a place that was already tender. It's easy to understand putting such a letter away in a drawer or archiving an email after just one reading. It's too painful to read again. Fortunately, parents do tend to keep these messages rather than shredding or deleting them. Anything your estranged adult child decides to send you is potentially a pathway to reconnection. I wrote a short blog post about this called Criticism as a Form of Connection, which I'll link to in the show notes. Now, some messages that I've seen from estranged adult children are truly hostile. They're riddled with foul language and you statements, accusing the parent of being a horrible person, let alone parent. There's no explicit expression of emotion in these letters and no account of the child's personal experience. It's an all-out verbal attack on the parent. When I see an email or text like that, which is thankfully not often, I perceive raw pain and rage that has yet to be processed. And there is no written response from the parent that I can come up with that would improve the situation as it stands. But even in those extreme cases, I believe there is still hope. As the adult child continues to grow and learn from life, there's a chance at least that they will further differentiate from the parent and heal to a point where productive communication becomes possible. Until then, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't much processing for the parent to do with such a hostile message, other than to grieve the fact that their adult child can connect with so much pain and rage at this point in their lives. So actively and intentionally grieving is about all the short-term processing that I can think of in the face of a rage-filled letter containing nothing but personal attacks. However, happily, the majority of letters from estranged adult children that I've seen do not fall into that category. These letters can be processed and mined for helpful information on how to heal the rift. The problem is, there's often a mismatch between the reasonable and sometimes even loving tone of a letter and the parent's interpretation of it. Even when the child has taken care to use I statements, when they talk about their own experience and not the parent's flaws, and they sprinkle the letter with validation of the parent's good intentions and good qualities, the parent can still feel completely beaten up by the child's expression of emotional pain. And the entire letter is viewed through a negative lens. I've had parents fail to notice statements like, "I love you and I do want to have a relationship with you." When I point out a sentence like that, the parent will say, "Oh, I'm glad you think that's a good sign." But it doesn't allay their anxiety They don't give it the same weight as their child's disappointment, hurt, or anger. And that's just human nature, which is important to understand. We have brains that are wired to focus on what's threatening, not what's safe. So we have to put first impressions aside and apply mental effort if we want to make accurate assessments. And that's at the heart of processing a letter from your estranged adult child, moving ever closer to an accurate assessment of its contents, so that you can mine the letter for crucial information about necessary steps for reconnection. This episode is going to spill over into another one because getting a letter from an estranged adult child is a big deal. Given that such a letter may contain the best information out there on how to reconnect with your adult child, processing that letter effectively is probably the best thing you can do if you want to reconnect as soon as possible. For now, if you receive something from an estranged adult child and it evokes difficult emotions, you'll need to be able to process those emotions before evaluating the contents of the letter and responding to it. Because if you don't start with your emotions, they will bully you into either avoiding the letter altogether or interpreting it through a lens of themselves, maybe fear, hopelessness, anger, resentment, shame. Whatever it is, those emotions will stand in the way of you getting the information that you need to be able to make any necessary repairs to the relationship. So the first part of processing a letter from your adult child is to sit with and tolerate your emotions about the letter until they decrease to a more manageable level. Please note, unfortunately, this isn't optional. You're going to have feelings, and what you do with them could either help end the estrangement or keep it going. Use constructive wallowing if you don't have a therapist who welcomes all emotions in your sessions. I'll link to my constructive wallowing book in the show notes. And I'll also link to episodes 139, 140, and 168, which I encourage you to review. In this episode, I'm urging you to begin with the emotional processing of your adult child's message. This means focusing on your feelings, not your child's intentions or even their feelings or needs right now. If you want to build a strong and beautiful house that will last a lifetime, you must begin with the foundation. Please don't skip the foundational step of what I call constructive wallowing. In the next episode, I'll take you through a thought experiment that you can use as a framework for the intellectual part of processing a letter from your estranged adult child. Until then, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.